It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. Now, you can find me at Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. Just email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com, and you can get a hold of me that way. If you like our show, be sure and check out our Patreon. Everything you hear Monday to Friday on AM/FM radio, you could find on our Patreon. Also, too, there's been a lot of, with all the ads and the commercials cut out, but I've been putting up a lot of exclusive content, too, lately. I have the behind-the-scenes story about Mel's Hole, the old Art Bell story with Mel's Hole. I know the guy that wrote the story. I knew Art Bell, and I tell all my behind-the-scenes information about that story on Patreon. Also, too, I just recently did an interview with May Pang, John Lennon's girlfriend. It's a 20-minute interview. We have that up there exclusively on Patreon, but you can always go back to the archives and find I did a 2-hour interview with May Pang a few years ago if you want to really flesh it out. Our archives you could find for free at Spreaker.com or Apple Plays. Every Friday night I do a live show on Spreaker. There's a chat room. There's an email notification when I put up new content. And you can go through all our archives. There are like 4,000 hours worth of shows. Our guest today is Eric Hecker. Now, you could find him on deciphering.tv. Now, this is a fascinating guy. He's a fireman, former plumber from Long Island, has some kind of connection to the Stargate Project, and was working in Antarctica and has information about directed energy weapons. Eric Hecker, are you there?
I am, sir. Thank you very much for having me today. How are you doing?
Actually, I woke up kind of sick today. I woke up with a fever today. But
oh, geez.
Oh, yeah. I'm having a good day, man.
Make sure you hydrate.
No, I'm trying. But tell us about yourself. If I were to meet you like in a bar or a kid's soccer game and I says, hey, I'm Ed Opperman, private investigator, radio host, what would you say? I'm Eric Hecker.
I'm Eric Hecker, and I would say that I work in remote maintenance, and that, you know, I would probably engage that person trying to see what angle they're coming from and what interests them, so that it would be an amicable conversation. But I guess if I was to try to share some of my experience, I would probably start trying to apply info about, you know, the state of directed energy weapons and technology nowadays on this planet, that things aren't necessarily what we've been led to perceive. I think it's a big deal contemporarily.
Okay, so you were born and grew up in Long Island?
That's correct.
And then it says that you were somehow, in your childhood, you were part of the Stargate Project. Now, what is the Stargate Project?
That was a program that seems to be bounced around from different alphabet agency to different alphabet agency in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and probably still going on today. But the projects were in remote viewing and utilizing what we would consider, you know, psychic abilities, and that they were doing this with adults as well as children. And I know this because I was in the child capacity, being exposed to things that I now know are just the protocols of the Robert Monroe Institute and what they teach about remote viewing. But when I was a child going through it, we were just being deceived and put to the same activities. But it took me a very long time to figure out what was actually going on.
Okay, now that's interesting. You grew up in Long Island. I grew up in Staten Island. Well, first the Bronx, then Staten Island. Mm-hmm. Now, and remote viewing. I didn't realize Stargate Project was remote viewing. I mentioned in the little preamble there when I was talking about Patreon, my connection to Art Bell. So I did have a little connection, a little contact with Ed James, who was a big remote viewing guy. Now,
big time. Yeah, Ed's right in the middle of that project.
Now, what was your personal experience in remote viewing?
That they would give us eye drops, which through my research, I believe was some sort of fast onset, low yield, like rapid departing LSD variant. And that in that medicated state, they were running us through the standard protocols for, I guess you would say, an ideogram based remote viewing process that the Monroe Institute utilizes, which Ed Dames has actually put out training videos where he was doing the exact same system with his son. This is, the exact same thing that Ed Dames did in that video with his child was what they were doing to us in the library with the ideograms and ascertaining information from a line that we, scribbled on paper.
And how old were you?
Oh, geez, this would have been deep into my youth. For the most part, it expands through my entire grammar school years, which I would say would be kindergarten through 8th grade for specificity. I guess that varies from some places to others. But from kindergarten to 8th grade, I would say that I was heavily involved in some sort of training regimen in regards to the finer aspects of humanity.
And how would this work? They would take you from school? You with a group of kids by yourself? Did your parents know?
They would take us from class, bring us to the library in the school. No, my parents did not seem to know that this was going on. And it's, it happened quite regularly.
I lived in Nevada for a while there, and they have the Bigelow Aerospace Museum. Are you familiar with that?
I'm not actually.
Well, Bob Bigelow, he was friends with Art Bell and stuff like that, and run the.
I've heard of the guy. I'm not familiar with the museum.
He owns all those budget suites over there,
Mm-hmm.
His character, and all the kids there, the little kids, for their school trips, go to that Bigelow Museum, and there's like a special little film that they show all these kids.
Oh boy, that seems odd.
Oh, it's perfectly fine, right?
Yeah, I mean, what could be going wrong there?
Oh, yeah, that's nothing to see here.
Yeah. Who wants to be part of the breakaway civilization next?
Yeah, right. Okay, so now this was happening in school. Your parents didn't know. That's very interesting. Mm-hmm. Okay, and that was your experience with this. Now, did it end there, or did this go on after this experience in grammar school?
I don't think it ended per se. I think there was almost just different how would I put it? Almost like you would graduate to a different level of interaction. I mean, the longer this stuff goes on, I mean, when I first started speaking publicly, I kind of joked around with the idea of am I a targeted individual? But now I'm like, man, I think there's a lot of credence to a lot of the things that targeted individuals through the decades have been claiming, that there's research and development, there's practical applications. It's a very interesting thing to pay a lot of attention to what's going on around you nowadays. Well, most people are very distracted by digital appurtenances.
Yeah. So you look to be in your pictures here. You're about 55, 60.
Who, me?
Oh, did I insult you? I'm sorry.
No, I'm not insulted. I just need to take better pictures, apparently.
Sunglasses. You got a scarf on. You're supposed to be about 55. How old are you?
I'm in my late 40s, and I don't even know what picture you're talking about. Oh, you're talking about off my website, all geared up. Oh, yeah, who would know?
Okay, I apologize. Late 40s.
No, that's all good. That's hilarious.
I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. It's stuck my foot. Like I said, I have a fever today, so I have an excuse. Now,
no, that's fine.
So now that you're older, you're in your 40s, have you gone back to your family members and say, hey, I think this happened to me when I was a kid? What do they say?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, my father, I've communicated with this on many times, and this is where I'm getting a lot of good feedback to, get a different perspective of what was going on back then. And yeah, he's aware of, things that did occur and now looks at them differently in hindsight as well. So we're kind of just putting our heads together. Like I said earlier, as a child, in my first-hand experience with this stuff in chronological order, I was being lied to. So, it's a lot to ask a child who's being deceived to tell you exactly what's going on. So there's a lot of things that I had to look into to get answers to questions that I had been carrying for years, but, didn't even know what to do with.
And then what about today? Do you still feel you have remote viewing abilities? Do you still practice this today?
Of course, everybody has remote viewing abilities, and it's just a matter of who wants to exercise them. Just like, anybody can play the guitar. It's just a matter of how good you are and how much you practice, right? So I just come from the angle of I was heartily trained in it as a child, and having had practice and proficiency at one point, they say it's like muscle memory. So it's, I guess, easy for me to know things.
Well, give me some examples of when you were a kid that you experienced with remote viewing.
Well, it would have been the times in the library where they were running us through the protocols. We'd be sitting at a desk, putting the ideogram on the paper, and they would go through the line of questions. Do you see mountains or water? Do you see sun or a moon? And they would just tell you that don't think too hard. Just whatever comes to mind is the right answer. And that was one of the things that always stuck out to me as extremely peculiar. Was I went to a very old-fashioned German-Irish Catholic school on Long Island, so it was I'm sure you can imagine. But in that process, there's right and there's wrong. That's the world that I was raised in, and wrong got your ass beat usually. And so the fact of the matter of entering that library where anything you say now is the right answer was extremely peculiar. That was, struck me as very odd at the time.
Well, you got to imagine, I went to a Catholic school, too, as well, in the Bronx.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, Same school that Sotomayor, the Supreme Court judge, went to.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And I'm 20 years older than you, so you can imagine what it was like back in those days.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Oh, for sure.
It was torture, man. You had to fight your way in and fight your these nuns,
Yeah, absolutely.
But is there a remote viewing experience that stands out to you? Hey, Ed, I saw this ship out in the middle of the ocean. I saw this thing, something like that.
I guess I would have to say that quite a few years ago, I guess almost similar to Nikola Tesla, I started seeing some complex patterns and things like that were becoming very prevalent in my thought stream, I guess you would say. And I eventually wound up having to put pen to paper and drawing out everything that I was envisioning. So I would say that was a very powerful remote viewing, because it was almost like, sometimes you feel like when you're utilizing these skills that you are making a call out to the cosmos and gathering information. But this one, it almost seemed like somebody was calling me, like, hey, this info is for you.
Very interesting. And also, too, back to the Catholic school experience, I can remember when I was a kid, they would do this thing, I guess it was about once a year, where they would have you test our hearing. They would put this thing in.
Yeah.
Okay, right. Any information about that you find suspicious now looking back?
Oh, absolutely, 1,000%. The soundproof booth was oftentimes something that we would sit in, and, we would don the earphones, and they would tell you, listen for the sounds, and, lift your hand on this side if you hear a sound over here, and vice versa. And that's all well and good. And there's actually a lot of good and bad that, depending on what technology and what you think the handlers are up to, could be going on. But we do have to clarify that, in regards to the remote viewing program specifically, these boxes were also like Faraday cages. So there's a lot of conversation about the Stargate program and the MK Ultra programs utilizing these types of devices as Faraday cages so that they could have more control over the subject, I guess you would say, or understanding of the controls upon them, so that there wasn't outside interference with things.
Yeah, Faraday cage would filter out the frequencies and radio frequencies, all kind of stuff like that. Now, okay. What about now? Okay, now I'm on Facebook, and you're not, though. Okay, but now that I've done the radio show, people from my grammar school from Blessed Sacrament over there have contacted me and says, "Hey, Ed, I remember you," and we talked about the nuns beating us up. Okay, it's usually the main topic. Have you been contacted by anyone from your childhood and said, "Hey, Eric, man, I remember having this happen to me too"?
Not that I want to give out names and things like that, but absolutely, I get a lot of support from all of the folks that I seem to have become a champion for their voice publicly when, you know, they don't want to be the public voice. So I guess, you know, there are folks behind me that, you know, are very happy that I'm putting out there what I am. So, yeah, absolutely. I think it's, you know, somebody's got to do it.
Okay, then it says you were involved in a submarine service. So you enlisted in the Navy or something like that?
I had, yeah.
Okay, and what do you think influenced you to do that? You think that was part of this programming?
I do, actually. Yeah, I think that there are certain factions, including the United States Navy, that's well aware of the product that they need to fill, you know, in the voids for, let's just say, vacancies and seats for, you know, sailors. But I don't think they waited for me to become 18 years old to enlist in the United States Navy to then request the job to be a fire control technicians on up to and including nuclear tipped weapons and having the potential to kill millions of people. I think what they're looking for in that role is something that they start working, or I should say looking for early and working with to create well before the training period where folks like myself feel like they volunteered into it.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at. Like, what would attract you to being in a submarine? It seems like a miserable.
Very
worse. It's like prison.
Understood. And in a way, I guess I would say I'm a good glutton for punishment. That seems to be what I've proven from at the very least the time at the South Pole Station, where I spent a year at the South Pole. Let's just say they were austere conditions. You know, they would often say it's
in a submarine. This is part of your submarine.
No, I didn't go in a submarine. I went in a separate program, working for Raytheon Polar Services under a contract by the National Science Foundation. I spent a year at the South Pole Station, and they would say things that, you know, it's a harsh effing continent and things like that.
Yeah, but and especially come from Long Island, the winters are enough. You know,
understood. Yeah, so
the summer, yeah, but no,
yeah. At this stage of the go ahead
for a second. What about like the odors of these men? You're right on top of each other. How is all that?
They have a device called the charcoal scrubber would be the polite term for it. And the air filtration is extremely important on a submarine, and they have a very high quality system.
Oh, really? So it works. You don't have that kind of problem.
Yeah. Well, the idea is that technically every smell moves around the submarine very rapidly, but then it's also negated almost as quickly.
Just the close quarters, man. It would just terrify me to even think about that. Okay. So now you get out of the service and then you become a plumber. Right. What, in Long Island?
Yep. The North Shore of Long Island, which I'm sure you know to be very affluent, the Gold Coast.
And what kind of plumbing? Just a commercial plumbing or just...
Residential, commercial, industrial, you name it. I worked for some of the oldest companies that have been around, multi-generational, and just seem to have the contracts for all the most peculiar places that you could think of. Long Island is pretty much a military industrial complex manufacturing facility that's been fortified, you know, ever since it was developed. There's all kinds of equipment there.
Okay, so then when did you leave the service? Because it says in 2010 you got involved with the South Pole researcher, I guess, for Raytheon.
Yep, 2010 was when I got contracted to go south, and I would say basically I did 366 days straight on the continent of Antarctica.
Okay, wait a second. So what year did you leave the Navy?
1994.
Okay, 94. So you're about 6 years as a plumber, but then what? I guess you got the training for this fire control you described it as, right? Were you doing any kind of fire control outside of the military to Raytheon?
No, absolutely not.
And then you get offered this contract with Raytheon in 2010 to go to the South Pole.
To South Pole and Antarctica.
And for some reason you accept. Okay.
Absolutely. I had a lot of trepidation in the exchange, but the fact of the matter was this was, a time, post Obama having decimated the New York economy, that at the time this Raytheon Corporation was the only one looking to cut me a check. So, I had bills to pay like everybody else. So I reluctantly took the offer and, got connected with South Pole Station.
So this was a substantial contract for you?
No, not at all. It was a terrible contract. Again, it was just the only one that was being offered. So I had to take it. It was terrible pay, actually. And they pretty much ripped us off on overtime. But,
it's not a very ethical company.
I mean, they make their lion's share of money in weapons and targeting systems. So, they kill people for profits.
Yeah, and they dumped a bunch of hazardous waste down in Florida, too. And
I don't doubt it. After I gave my testimony in Washington, D.C. this past June, within a week they had changed their corporate name. So I was very happy about that because I really put them on blast. And I think Raytheon is the devil incarnate in corporate form.
Okay, but you must have been doing well as a plumber, right? No?
No, not really. That's why I needed the contract. The economy had totally tanked.
Okay, so then you go to work for Raytheon and fire control down to the South Pole and Antarctica. So tell us what happened down there.
The ice cube neutrino detector, which is a scientific array. Man, it's challenging to do it when it's just story time. Because I guess I found out that a lot of the electronic systems down there that are presented as scientific testing equipment are actually directed energy weapons systems.
You hear that same thing said about HARP, in Alaska. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
And do you think HARP is they're still using HARP today?
I know they are. I live up here. I'm familiar with every news article that comes out where they talk about it being shut down, and then it's never, ever, ever shut down. It's always refunded.
So you've been out there to HARP?
Twice, at least.
And you've seen it still in operation?
Absolutely.
What year was this?
I don't know off the top of my head. Like I said, within the last 10 years. I mean, the time I've been residing up here in Alaska. Actually, I think I've been past it 3 times now that I think about it.
Where do you live in Alaska?
Anchorage.
And what do you do there now?
I do remote maintenance still.
Remote maintenance?
Correct. I don't work where I live, so I'll fly out to remote areas from where I live and maintain facilities out in the middle of nowhere.
Well, if you can work anywhere, you could live anywhere then, right? You could live in Phoenix, Arizona, or Tucson, Arizona.
Absolutely. Yep, totally could.
Okay, then why would you want to live in Alaska?
Alaska is one of the most beautiful places on the planet.
You think so, huh?
I know so.
Okay. All right. I've had some feelings up in Alaska. I don't find it a very pleasant place to live.
Oh, geez.
Or there's living conditions and stuff like that.
Well, you can't tell me everywhere you looked wasn't beautiful, though.
No, I've never lived there in Alaska, but I've just had dealings there.
Well, that's what I'm saying. In your dealings, everywhere you looked when you were here had to be gorgeous.
No, I've never been there. No.
Oh.
Yeah, I was involved in an investigation of Sarah Palin and Todd Palin.
10-4.
Okay. And, I had an ex-girlfriend lived up there, too.
Yeah, that's just paperwork then. It's not the experience.
Well, yeah. Okay. So then you get hired by Raytheon in 2010. They send you down to Antarctica. And what was your role down there? If your role down there was in fire control, how did you get exposed to this other equipment?
Well, you're definitely mincing words. Okay. My role down there was not fire control. That was a title in the Submarine Service.
Oh, I'm sorry.
The role down in Antarctica as a tradesman, I was contracted as a plumber, and then in that capacity of wintering over, I was trained to be a firefighter. So that basically got me the key to the entire facility and the ability to connect more dots than most people there.
Okay, so then you were an eyewitness to some devices and equipment there, right? And you saw them in operation?
Yes, sir.
And what did you see them do?
It would just be like watching. I mean, when you say, "What did you see them do?" I saw them on. I mean, it's not something you see something do. I don't. It's a really funny way of. I don't.
No, I'll finish. No, what did you see them do to make you conclude that these were some type of directed energy weapons?
It had nothing to do with what I saw them do. It had to do with the getting the paperwork from the manufacturer that says what it does, and talking to the operators who then confirmed the nefarious things that it could do. So it was more through research and networking than through a direct observation. These devices pretty much they don't do anything you can see. Okay. That's kind of the problem. They directed energy weapon systems are invisible. So
well, then in order to see this paperwork, did you have a security clearance?
There was no clearance required. It's public information that people just didn't realize was right under their noses.
So you saw this paperwork, and the paperwork is available on your website to decipher?
Yes, it is. In the archive section, you can go into there, and it'll say DOM document, and that's a page basically right out of the University of Wisconsin's operator's manual for the ice cube neutrino detector, which is public information.
ISO neutrino?
Ice cube neutrino detector.
Ice cube neutrino.
Yep.
And what does that stand for? What does that mean?
It's a detector of neutrinos.
Yeah, what is a neutrino?
A neutrino is a near massless particle that moves, as we were told at the time, close to, at, or beyond the speed of light.
Okay. Ice cube neutrino detector. So this would be to detect something moving at the speed of light?
Potentially, yep.
And what are they looking for?
They said from where they were coming from.
So for alien spacecraft or something like that?
That would be what they were not discussing, but on the possibilities list, that exotic propulsion engines that would emit neutrinos would also be able to be observed and tracked and trafficked like air traffic control of, conventional airliners.
Okay, then when you saw the paperwork and then you to speak to the operators, what did the operators of these equipment say to you?
That it's a directed energy weapons platform. It transmits, and we accidentally caused the earthquakes in Christchurch, New Zealand, when this device was initially turned on.
Mm. Okay, and then were there any things that they did on purpose in order to purposely cause a...
Not to my knowledge.
Well, then how did you leave off with these guys? When they first tell you, hey, man, we're using this stuff here, and we kind of caused this big earthquake, how did that conversation go?
How we left off is what I'm up to now, is trying to communicate this information to the world so that we, the people, understand what's actually going on around us.
So then how long were you up there in Antarctica with these fellows talking about this equipment?
Well, you're mincing words again. These conversations didn't happen in Antarctica. They happened post-Antarctica. But I was in Antarctica for 366 days.
Okay.
And I continued to stay in touch with a multitude of people from the program. And it was in those continued conversations that I became abreast of what was actually going on.
So while you were there, all you really saw was the paperwork?
The paperwork came afterwards as well, sir.
Okay, so you're there, you leave. So when you were there, did you have any suspicions of any type of nefarious activities with this equipment?
Absolutely. From the time that I heard that Raytheon was the hiring contractor, I figured there was all kinds of shenanigans afoot.
Okay, but while you were there was no smoking gun evidence for you until you left, and then you got this paper.
Well, that's incorrect. Also, there was another system known as ELF, and that one I did discover myself to be a smoking gun, so to say, because they had specifically told me that it was off, de-energized, defunct, dismantled, however you want to put it, but I discovered that it was not, that it was energized and fully operational. So that's a technology, a system that is right on the list of directed energy weapons platforms, or at the very least suspect for the activity thereof, with multitude of things that it could potentially be doing against we the people of this planet.
Okay.
So,
and ELF is that stuff that can make you hear voices in your head?
yeah, seems to be on the list of possibilities.
Okay. And what does ELF stand for?
I believe extra low frequency or extreme. It could be extreme low frequency.
Okay. Yeah, and HARP is low frequency too. That's a low frequency thing too. There. What's the official story for what HARP is used for?
Oh, like ionospheric research. But I mean, anybody can look up the patent and right off the bat, it's called an ionospheric heater. So, I get that people are complaining that, look what we're doing to the environment and it's us that are doing it. Well, it very well may be that we are negatively impacting the environment, but not in the way that we're being presented in the slightest.
Okay, so you were there for a year. While you were there, you discovered the ELF technology. But it wasn't until you left. And I don't want to put words in your mouth. I know you keep getting upset that I'm putting words in your mouth. Okay, I'm trying not to. I'm just trying to understand. Then
I got you.
Okay, then you leave about a year. What caused you to leave? Your contract was up. You just want to get the hell out of there? I would.
Yep, and the contract. Contract completion, mission accomplished.
What'd you go to do for a living when you left there?
I wound up getting into the North Slope of Alaska, working in the remote aspects of Alaska.
Doing what?
Remote maintenance.
Remote maintenance again. And what kind of equipment do you do this maintenance
on? Man camps, which is like a remote hotel.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I have another friend who worked on one of those man camps up there, and she was exposed to some kind of pesticide or something like that. They had to pull her out of there.
Oh, that's weird.
Yeah. We had a lawsuit with that. Okay, so now then what happened then? You stayed in contact with these workers over these, the operators you described them as, and then they told you this other nefarious capabilities of this equipment.
Correct.
And what did they tell you that it could do, and then what did they tell you that it was doing?
Well, they introduced me to the paperwork that said it could transmit. So we had a conversation about what it was really doing in transmit mode and, the whole conversation about the earthquakes.
But you didn't think to have this conversation while you were there? You didn't have this conversation until after you left?
How would I have known to have the conversation while I was there? Hey, guys, what's going on? Is it possible that the telescope is a big cover story and it's really an earthquake generator? I'm pretty intuitive, but that would have been a leap.
Okay, so now you were informed about the Christchurch earthquake. Do you have knowledge of any other earthquakes caused by this device?
Not by this device.
Then by what?
What are you getting at, Your Honor?
I do tend to interrogate. I apologize. I'm just trying to get your statement. Okay, I'm not trying to put words.
Oh, fair enough. I know, but yeah. I mean, I also have to trust that this is a radio interview and not something else nefarious.
Why not? You can look me up. I'm on the radio.
Fair enough.
Okay. Got a microphone right there. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I've never been a private investigator.
Well, you can look me up.
Fair enough.
At Opera, you can Google me right now while we're talking.
Yeah, it's all good.
Very well known. I forgot what I was going to say, and I told you I had that fever today, man. I apologize.
It's all good.
So,
got to keep some fluids handy.
I know I got water in front of me, but now, wait. Right. What else are you aware that they're using these weapons for? And by the way, just because I'm a private investigator, there's nothing. If this is going over the radio, everyone's going to hear it anyway. It's not like it's a private discussion.
Oh, understood. But I don't know you from a hole in the wall. That's a loaded statement right there. You're saying if this goes over the radio, I have no idea if this is going over the radio. I have no idea when you and I hang up. I didn't look into anything.
Right. But I'm saying though, whether it's a recorded conversation privately for private investigation work or going over the radio, everyone's going to hear this.
If you say so.
Okay. Google me real quick, man. That offer.
It's all good.
Okay. But now you heard about this accidental Christchurch. What else do you believe that they're using these devices to do?
Oh, from my research and understanding of things, post observation and after a bunch of looking into stuff and talking to folks, I believe that we have the ability to observe exotic propelled engines that are emitting neutrinos, so that the facility is some sort of an air traffic control station. And it also appears that this type of massive phased array, presumably quantum entangled system, can provide instantaneous long-range communications to what would be an off-world fleet of technologically advanced stuff that the vast majority of us aren't privy to seeing. And this is supported by the testimony of guys like Gary McKinnon, who hacked into the Navy computers and found the spreadsheet that listed all the off-world vessels and the captains of those vehicles respectively. So I just found the communications system that, tolerates these vehicles moving at great distance and still being connected.
Oh, well, yeah, I've seen the Gary McKenna material, but you said you saw something about you determined that this equipment could do long range communication.
Yep, just through following the research and looking at what was present and what's potentially available, and I have documentation for that up in the archive section on the website as well.
And so then, I guess it would just be speculation, but then you think you're communicating with the U.S. type Space Force, not alien Space Force.
I mean, technically, at that point, when you have this type of technology, the sky's kind of the limit. I wouldn't want to presuppose more than what we can connect the dots to, but it certainly looks like we have evidence of an off-world fleet, and it looks like we have evidence of an ability to communicate with them.
So now, when did you start talking about this publicly?
I guess it's maybe been about 3 or 4 years now.
Okay, and so then have you had any kind of repercussions from this, any kind of pushback?
Oh, absolutely. I get all kinds of threats and stuff like that. But I mean, you're from Staten Island. I'm sure you can understand that most people are just jokers that are never going to deliver on their threats.
Okay, so you get verbal death threats, not hacking, any kind of things like that, or
all the above. Yeah. Hackers, fake interviewers, which in the grand scheme of that happens too. Like I've had full blown shenanigans occur where people were just looking to dig for info or to discount what I'm presenting. So I've been run through the ringer in that. I'm familiar with agencies when they come just tap you on the street. It's actually really fun at this point when that happens. The TSA doesn't really care for me in the airports, and it's like I was spit in my face when I was in Washington D.C. giving my testimony at the Dr. Greer event.
Okay. Yeah, I was going to ask you, where did you testify in D.C.?
I testified at the National Press Club event. I testified in a private, I guess you'd like seminar or convention. I don't know what you would call those things that Dr. Greer put together, Disclosure 2.0. There was a whole bunch of other whistleblowers there, along with myself. So I testified there. And then at that same weekend encounter in D.C., I went and testified for the Senate Intelligence Committee and a department known as Arrow, and they had two separate skiffs that I had to go to share my evidence and testimony.
Okay, that's interesting. So you did testify before the Senate Intelligence Committee?
Absolutely.
Okay, and who was running that committee at the time?
Something I don't believe I'm allowed to discuss the names of anybody involved. The skiffs are secret compartmented information facilities, and I'll state that I know one of the groups very clearly stated that we were not allowed to give out their names or the location of the facility that I was being questioned in. So just because of that, I'm not sure if I was allowed to say anything about the other people. So I'm gonna refrain.
Then what was the nature of your testimony to them? Can you tell us what you told them?
Exactly what I'm telling you today.
Okay. Now, when you were telling them this, were they surprised to hear this, or they had heard it before? What is your?
Oh, they were floored. My testimony was very well received. It was scrutinized. I had a lot of questions going back and forth between myself and I guess what I would refer to as almost like their science officer. There was a fistful of people in the room, one of which was this science officer type person. And it was more or less me engaging in a dialogue with this person, and then he would pause every now and again to translate what we were saying into something the other people in the room would understand. And it went very well. They were very appreciative for what I shared. They ultimately understood what I was getting at. They told me it was very important that I had shared this with them, that my information was going into the National Archives and was going to be rapidly expedited up to Congress, because it seems that the problem we, the people of the United States, at the very least, are suffering under is that some of these agencies have gone so secret that they've just gone completely rogue. They're no longer operating with congressional oversight, and that's a problem for us.
Okay, but civilians at Raytheon would be aware of this project.
Not necessarily. I mean, certainly possible.
Well, someone at Raytheon would know about this, right? Because they're building it.
Of course, if you're gonna be that vague, for sure, somebody would have to know.
Okay, so Raytheon knows about this.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this program over there in Antarctica, in South Pole, is that a civilian installation? Is it a for-profit installation? Is it a government installation? What is it?
I would say it's operating under the International Geophysical Year, which is a very peculiar arrangement. That it's called the Amundsen Scott International South Pole Station. So there's a reference to it being more than a U.S. interest. So a lot of this stuff, these are great questions, but the deciphering all of this stuff, the devil's in the details, and this is what people need to start considering and understanding, is that things are a lot more complex around us, and it's not to our benefit.
The Amundsen Scott installation, is that a civilian installation, or is it a for-profit? Is it a science?
It's not for profit. It's
because Raytheon's
it's a science. I guess we would say it's a science facility that's owned by the United States, but operated by different third-party contractors. At the time I was there, it was Raytheon Polar Services, and now I believe it's Lockheed.
Okay, and the people you didn't have a security clearance. Did the people working?
Nobody had a security clearance. There was none required.
No one had a security clearance with none required, but then the Senate Intelligence Committee is not aware of what's going on there?
How would they know? When were they there?
I don't know.
That's what this is. Well, this is the reality of life. There's only the only people that know what's going on are the people that have the experience, right?
Right.
The only people that know what's going on 2nd Avenue are the people that have been on 2nd Avenue. If you've never been to 2nd Avenue, you're going to have to ask someone who was.
Are you aware of either the Stephen Greer Press Club conference there, or the Senate Intelligence Committee bringing in other people from Raytheon or other workers from this installation? Because did they ask you for other names of the people who were sharing this information with you?
I brought in another whistleblower with me to corroborate things that I was getting at.
Okay, great. And so then they spoke to you and another fellow.
And another coworker, correct?
From
the South Pole Station.
Right, this Amundsen Scott Station. Okay, and he didn't have a security clearance either, though.
Nobody would have had a security clearance. There wasn't one required.
What was his responsibilities there at the installation? What was his job there, description?
This person was a work order scheduler.
Work order scheduler. Okay, interesting. Okay, and where does he live now? Does he live in Alaska too?
This doesn't seem to be pertinent to the conversation. It seems like more of a inquiry.
Okay,
seems peculiar.
You said you didn't want to tell a story, okay? So I'm trying to, and
fair enough, but this understood. But even with that consideration, your line of questioning seems extremely peculiar.
Okay, then what would you like to tell us besides that been to this installation here and you have information about this earthquake? What else would you like to tell us?
I guess I would like to tell everybody to be very careful who you listen to on the internet, because a lot of these people are gatekeepers that are trying to control the conversation. That the vast majority of them are just speculating about stuff that they can't prove. They try to talk the talk when they've never walked the walk.
You know, I totally agree with you on that. I think there's a ton of disinformation out there, and I think it's well funded and by the same kind of people I'm up against every freaking day. Okay, and after the show, you can Google me and see what I've been up to. Give us what made you bring that up now, though, about disinformation on the internet, especially, but that these forces out there to promote disinformation and gatekeep this information. What made you bring that up?
Mostly the way that this conversation was going. The usual first red flag that I have to conversations going this way is when they're not on video, when the other person doesn't want me to see them.
Okay, yeah, I don't have a camera in the studio. Listen.
Understood.
Okay, I seem to have upset you. Okay?
It's all good,
and I apologize for that. And I've been on Sean Atwood's show too. He's been on my show. We know a lot of the same people. Okay, I don't know what it is. What of my questions has upset you today? That gotten you?
Well, I would just say this whole type of interview where you're apparently I don't know, just underinformed, ill-informed as to who I am, what I'm up to, where I'm headed. It's like an interview that I could have had 4 years ago. Okay, but the line of questioning was about as rudimentary as it gets.
Yeah, I know, because it's the first time the audience is meeting you. People are driving in their car. They're driving.
You could have accomplished all of that in an intro, and then we could have got to something a bit more contemporary.
Then okay, we got about 5 minutes left. What would you like the audience to know? Besides, you hate. I told you specifically at the front end of this. If you're going to continually ask me to just be a storyteller, it's not going to go well, and that's what you keep doing it. So it's all good. I mean, when you say tell the audience what do you want to know, I apologize. I told the host at the front end that if he's going to just request for me to be a storyteller instead of engaging with a dialogue that has direct questioning, which would show some sort of education on the information that I've given out previously for 4 years, this just looks like an interview where somebody was looking to fill airtime that I got stuck in. So then what about the person who's driving their car right now? They turn on the radio and they don't know who Eric Hecker is. How would they know?
Go to deciphering.tv and get caught up to speed and put in the effort.
Okay, we'll do that. I got to fill another 5 minutes. You want to give me something or no? Otherwise,
this is a perfect example. I mean, you're looking for me to fill 5 minutes for you right now.
Right. Otherwise, I can't because on the radio. It'll just be
So, but this goes to show that. You don't have anything to add in this equation. You literally you have no idea who I am. You're just looking to fill airtime. This is, standard, what do you think we should do with the information that I've shared with you today, sir? Now that you know somebody who's been down there and exposed it with documents, what do you think should happen?
Well, I would need some kind of real verification that this is really happening.
I have documents on my website. It's the fact that you haven't looked at them doesn't change the fact that this reality exists. So
I know, but none of the listeners have looked at them either. This is why
I'm not talking to the listeners. I'm talking to you. This is verifiable information. If you want to be lazy and not look, that's not on me. I've done my part. The documents do exist. They're a touch of a button away from you right now.
Well, then the audience should pull their car over and log it into the internet and look up these documents?
No, you should. You're the one that's interviewing me.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to, man. I'm trying to. The website.
You're saying you're basically challenging me, saying, well, if this was true, we'd need documents. Well, I have documents, so it is true. So now back to what do you think we should do about this now? Now that these directed energy weapons systems.
That's not a quote from me. I never said that. If this is true, where are the documents? I never said that. Okay.
It's called extrapolating.
The website is
using inferencing skills.
The website is called deciphering.tv. We've been talking to Eric Hecker. Thank you so much.